The opening is pretty perfect. This is one of the games. Of course, it's Shin Jinseo, so that makes it worth looking at. And they play a perfect opening. It's just that these players have studied with computer programs and they have a very good idea of what they want to do. I think the level of research in openings is much better than it used to be. And of course, Shin Jinseo has a very good understanding. Not only has he memorized a lot, I'm sure, but he has a very good understanding of what a computer program would want to do in a certain position. So he has he's very constant in getting the correct moves, you might say. And of course, the computer programs are very strong. So this is a position where white has played a kind of a interesting variant of the Chinese opening. And it's a position where white could have played a corner enclosure. It would have been perfectly okay for white to do something like, let's see, something like this. This is probably what I would think of. Or maybe a high enclosure. Or maybe the two space, I suppose. White had choices like this. But in the game, white chose to play a kind of a Chinese opening variant. So if white plays diagonally next to the star point in the center of the side, this move, then it is what we would call the Chinese opening style. And just locally, of course. And when he plays one line closer to the corner, it's similar in that area to what we were calling the mini Chinese or the miniature Chinese. In either case, what black usually does is black plays an attachment here. And so this is a move that was originally played by AlphaGo, I believe. Okay, someone is asking, who is Sada Atsushi playing against? And Sada Atsushi is playing against, he's playing against Tang Weixing, so he has a tough, well, everyone's tough in this tournament, but he does have a tough opponent. Usually black plays here, and if white plays a Hane, black's gonna try to get a shape like this, where black is playing on the more wide lower side. So since the lower side, there's more room for black to develop on it. Black usually turns it around like this. Or if white extends, black will be playing something like this, or something like this, just to reduce the corner. Not so sure about 9, but it's usually that shape. So he did something different. So this is Shin Jinseo. You would assume he knows what he's doing. So he invades here. So with this exchange, he has settled the corner territory, made a big territory there, and he has taken away the base from this white group on the outside. So it makes sense that he would want to invade next. And white is just trying to reduce that area. He's not actually giving up the stones. So up to this point, actually I would feel okay with black, because black does have a connected shape and white's group is sort of cut off. But white does have a fairly good position towards the lower left. So it's probably pretty close to even, or something like. A shape move would be to play here, but white instead attached in the corner. So this is a very active move. White played here. And when white does that, I might as well talk about this Joseki a bit. I actually made some videos that are close to that. But if black plays Hane on the outside, so against this move, black has, against an attachment in general, black will have a choice of a Hane on one side or the other, or an extension on one side or the other. It's kind of a general rule that when your opponent plays an attachment against your stone like this, it's a direct fight there, so you want to choose one of these 4 moves. So in fact, all of these 4 moves have been played in this local position in strong players games. So they're all feasible moves. But when black plays on that outside, first of all, you have to be aware of the fact that there's a ladder involved when white plays here. And if black can capture the ladder, in this case, it doesn't look very hopeful. All white stones in that direction. In fact, there's no way the ladder can get through these two white stones on the left side. So white's going to be able to escape, and it's usually not so good for black. So that's the outside honey. Black would probably continue with something like this, and it gets really complicated. I actually did a video about this, which is pretty pertinent, but white's idea will be, in some cases, just to sacrifice, well, while I say sacrifice, white is going to make a bit of a fight out of it, I guess. But in some cases, white can sacrifice, or things like this can happen. Actually, this is probably just not going to be good for black. So I was talking about it in a slightly different board position. And if black plays a hane on the inside, sorry, if black plays a hane on the inside, well, usually white has a reinforcing stone. But if white cuts here, it still depends on the ladder. Again, if black plays here and the ladder works, then it's going to be good for black. If the ladder doesn't work, black's going to play, let's see here. Maybe something like this. Right, it's going to be a big... White has some potential here to just sacrifice those two stones. So maybe something like this, and then cutting here would work. So there's some issues with the hane too, I suppose. It's just the fact that the ladder favors white so much. It's not a situation most people know. There's so many variations that can be played. I'd say that extending in this direction is probably the most unlikely and the most rare in strong players' games. So I wouldn't advise this one very much. But this one was the game move. Let's just go into the game variation. This was the game move. And I would suggest that this is something that is probably pretty good. This is something that you can use in your games if you want to keep it relatively simple. So white jumped out and black got to connect up. So if you're looking to get into this variation, usually that's what's going to happen when black goes straight down like that. So that was a relatively peaceful sequence. Uh-huh. So I'm caught up with this game. Okay. So this is Shin Jinseo has black. Yeah. If you look at his name in the upper right, you might see a little black dot on the left of it. So that's how it works if you can read the Chinese characters, that is. But yes, just because I'm planning on showing more than one game, I just omitted the colors since I didn't know them yet. So sorry about that, but I will be talking about it, yes, for sure. So Shin Jinseo has black in this game, and Li Qincheng has white. And so black is cut here. Looks like they're going to have a big fight in this area. So for white, the biggest concern is this group that white has on the left. So white will probably want to be focusing on the left side of this fight. So for instance, pulling back or playing Atari. Let's see. Okay, pulling back. And white can probably afford for black to be breaking through here. So if black breaks through like this, white can just keep on extending and will win the fight in the center in this case. So, and black has to go back here, so white will have time. White will have time to defend these stones with something like this. So that should be very good for white, actually. This would be too good, and black probably doesn't want to try to break through there. So I'd say the game is probably close to even. Black does have a lot of territory. Black has about 15 points in the upper right and about 15 points in the lower right. And I'd say the upper left area for black is something like 20 points. So black has about 50 points. And white will probably get the right side, something like 20 points there. But we don't know about the left side yet. So black definitely does have an advantage in territory, while white seems to have some potential to dominate in the center of the board. So that's how it's working out here. Okay, let's see. So black, I think black has a choice here. Black can continue with this fight in the center. Probably moving with this stone would be moves like, for instance, this, just to continue the fight in the center, or extending out here would be a good shape move. So something like this is conceivable. Or black could be looking for an opportunity. This would be an opportunity for black to look at the whole board position. And just because there's no weak black groups, and for the time being, this stone at M6, black hasn't really invested a tempo in it yet. So this is a point of the game where if black starts fighting with this stone in the center of the fight, then it's going to be hard to stop. But this is a point where black can still stop fighting in the center and, for instance, move towards the left side. Would be another option. Okay, almost exactly what Gabriel was asking about. Yeah, so is it better? I don't know. It's hard to say. But for instance, let's to give you an example of what could happen in the lower left corner again, probably be this move again. And let's see, if white plays here and black plays here, there's a ladder involved. And the ladder favors black, interestingly. That cut there is being a ladder break, so a ladder breaking move, so it works. I mean, in this case, since the ladder is black capturing white, I guess you might call it a ladder making move. Right, Leonardo. The idea that the stone here at M6 only has 2 liberties, and so it's important to save it. It's urgent as far as that stone is concerned. But you also look at the related groups and how weak they are. And the question is, will black be able to make a one-sided attack against the white group on the left? Because white doesn't have any other weak groups, and black doesn't have any weak groups on the board except for this one cutting stone at M6. So, so it's a choice. So once black, for instance, starts moving out with a move like this, for instance, and let's say white does something like this. Once this is started, the focus is on this fight in the center of the board, because black has invested a move there, and if black now dies, it's going to be a big deal. So this would heat up the center of the board. But at the point where black has just cut once and made an exchange with white pulling back, this is a point where black can afford to play some other part of the board. So I would actually seriously suggest that black can play here, because the left side is the most undecided area. It's an area where if black plays first, black can reduce that and keep a lead in territory. Whereas if white continues building that, there's a lot of space for that white territory to spread out to the lower part of the board. The lower left quarter of the board, that is. And since that cut in the upper left, upper right was played, it was played as an exchange for this white move. So it's not as if white has gained a tempo or even anything really big locally if white manages to capture the stone. So like an extreme example of that would be something like this. And it's very clear that the lower left corner is much bigger than anything that white got in the center of the board. So this would be, of course, a huge success for black. And it sort of supports the idea that black has an opportunity here to play away. And if black is going to start a fight in the center, black will not, it will be much more difficult for black to have an opportunity to do something like this in the lower left at any later point in the game. Okay, I should talk about the time too. In the upper right, you see the time of the players. But in this server, which is mirroring the games, I believe. They started with 3 hours, which I think is incorrect, because on the home page I saw that they have 2.5 hours each, actually. So you might have to subtract 30 minutes from the time that is showing there to get an estimate of how much time they have. And also these clocks that we're seeing in the upper right are the server's clocks for the moves being input on this server. So they don't exactly match what the players have. So there might be a slight difference there. And they have second reading, let's see, I think it's five times a minute, I believe. Yes, I believe it's 5 times a minute. And of course, it's the Chunlan Cup. So it's a Chinese tournament, and they have the Chinese rules and 7.5 points.